So President Biden has proposed a $1.9 trillion stimulus package. Well, is it time to go big or is it time to go bipartisan? Hello from Washington, D.C., our national capital. I'm Chuck Kyle, a 30-year strategic planner, a strategic communications expert, a retired intelligence officer, and a D.C. transplant from West Virginia. This morning, I have Dr. Dana Stryk in the house. She's going to help us work through the stimulus package. Good morning. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you? Good morning.
I'm
Got my
doing
coffee and I'm ready to go.
excellent. Okay, so let's talk about this stimulus package, $1.9 trillion. So what are the things that the U.S. has in their monetary toolkit in order to help the stimulus package?
Well, when we think about what a government can do when it's trying to respond to some sort of shock like the pandemic or the Great Recession in 2009, we like to describe it in two broad categories. You have fiscal policy and you have monetary policy. They are implemented differently and they have different effects on the economy. But regardless of whether you're the United States, you're Mexico, you're the European Union, those are the policy tools you have at your disposal.
So real quickly, what's the difference between fiscal policy and monetary policy?
Well, fiscal policy is the purview of the executive and legislative branches. Cue, I'm just a bill. Yes, I'm from Schoolhouse Rock. And this is going to be changes in tax policy, transfer payments such as unemployment compensation or some sort of income safety, social safety net like uh, the SNAP program, or just shovel-ready jobs, the government spending money and buying stuff. That's on one side of the equation. The other side of the equation is monetary policy, which is something that our central bank in the United States, the Federal Reserve, does, which influences credit markets and it changes the cost of borrowing money. So those are sort of the two tools that the economy has. Just really briefly, because monetary policy is sort of the lesser known cousin of fiscal policy. If the central bank, if the Fed wanted to do something to spur economic growth or decrease unemployment, its policy tool would be to try to lower interest rates, which would then cycle through and affect the economy. On the other side, if they wanted to slow the economy down because inflation was out of control, they would do something that would increase interest rates. So these are the two policy tools the government has.
Okay, so let's go back to the stimulus bill. Is that actually what we should be calling it? Is it a stimulus bill or should it actually be a disaster relief bill?
Well, one of the things that we've always talked about is words matter. And in this case, I think the adjective really matters. And it's called the stimulus bill. In fact, I call it the stimulus bill or stimulus checks. And that's not what it's designed to do. You want to think of this as disaster relief. I think it was said best by Justin Wolfers, who's an economist at the University of Michigan. Early on in the pandemic, he said what government needs to do, both fiscal and monetary policy, is build a time machine to carry the economy, carry us through to when the pandemic is over and we can go back to life as whatever normal will be. And so we want to think of this as trying to not boost where households are, but to keep them at least where they were when this pandemic started.
Okay, so if this isn't supposed to be stimulating the economy and it should be a disaster relief bill, what should be in the bill?
I think and I'm not, disclaimer, I am not a politician, so I understand sometimes you do things because it's the only way you can get a job done. However, if economists were running the world, we would say this is targeting disaster relief. And so what we want to do is we want in that policy things like extending unemployment benefits, the moratorium on evictions and things like that, and trying to actually send money and relief to households that are struggling. Things like the minimum wage to $15 an hour, which is slated to occur over a period of time. You can have a debate, and we have, if that is, good or bad, but that shouldn't be in this bill, I don't think. I think it's just things to try to target disaster relief, which has to go to households. We need some help for businesses and state and local governments as well.
Okay, so we have Janet Yellen, the Secretary of Treasury, Larry Summers, who's the former Secretary of Treasury, and Jerome Powell, who is the chairman of the Fed. Is it chairman of the Fed? Is that the correct terminology?
Chairman of the Federal Reserve Board, yes.
He's chairman of the Fed. They seem to all three have different views about this bill. Who's right? Who's wrong?
Well, yeah, first of all, you have three very well-respected economists. Janet Yellen, Secretary Yellen, used to hold Jerome Powell's job, and Larry Summers used to hold Janet Yellen's job. And so the argument is Janet Yellen is an advocate of this bill, saying we need to go big. What's interesting, in 2009, when we had the Great Recession, the person who was the Treasury Secretary at that time has later said that the Obama administration didn't go big enough. And the problem with that is it sort of, the recovery slowed, sputtered, and it took longer to sort of get back to some new normal. Ironically, that Treasury Secretary's name is Larry Summers. And so Secretary Yellen and former Secretary Summers disagree, I think, in where the economy is. How close are we to a full recovery? And Summers sees that this is going to push us beyond where we need to be, and it's going to be inflationary. And Yellen said, no, we need to go big. And in my opinion, so we have two things. We can go big and be right, or we could go small and be right. Okay. But what if we go big and Summers is right? So we went too big. Or the other option would be that we listen to Larry Summers, we go small, but Yellen's right, and we needed to go bigger. And this is where I think the words of Chairman Powell are particularly important. Since the beginning of the pandemic, he has sort of broken with orthodoxy and actually talked about what the whole of government should be doing. And he said, as the nation's central banker, there's only so much the central bank can do. They can ensure that credit markets still work and things like that, and that the banking system doesn't collapse. But they can't put unemployment compensation checks into people's bank accounts. And so he saw that there was this role that only fiscal policy can do, and he's been calling on Congress to actually do it. And what he said is, if, let's say, you go big and you go too big and the economy overheats, he can help with that. The Fed can raise interest rates and slow down the economy and bring inflation down. On the other side, if we go too small and there's something else that's needed, they can't do anything. The central bank's ability to stimulate the economy right now, because interest rates are already so low, is very, very limited. And so I'm going to go with Chairman Powell for 500, please. And I think he's right. We go big. We may be wrong, but that's okay.
Great. So, any final thoughts on this?
Well, it's something that we've talked about. Is I don't think this is the last round. So when we say, you call this go big or go partisan, we're going to be going bigger, because I don't think that this is the last time that the government's going to need to do something, and we don't know how long this is going to take to get back to whatever new normal happens to be.
So you're saying we should go big and not go bipartisan?
Yes. Actually, the one thing I would say is I think it's unfortunate that that's actually the accurate terminology. Anyway, it's too bad it can't be go big and go bipartisan at the same time.
Well, Dana, thank you very much for another truly enlightening discussion. Thanks.
Oh, happy to be here. Oh, a great fan of the show.
Thank you. If you like this video and the content, please hit the like button and subscribe. And when you subscribe, add in the comments, I subscribed. And as always, if you have any questions for Dr. Dana Stryk, make sure you put them in the comments section below.